Hey everyone, it's George from GTech Finance. Welcome back to another video. It's going to be a quick update about Janet Yellen's comments, not just on stimulus, but also blockchain and future taxation. So first, stimulus checks. Janet Yellen made very clear, and we've heard this many times, but this morning she made it exceptionally clear that the risk of doing too little outweighs the risk of doing too much. So when Sarah Eisen on CNBC during interview asked, well, what about the fact that stimulus checks could go to people that or individuals that could take that money and invest it into stocks, like a lot of people are doing, and like I would love to do because I follow a lot of finance channels. It's entirely possible that people are going to get checks who don't necessarily need them, but Janet Yellen insisted that these are stimulus checks that are designed to stimulate the economy. So why not get the checks out that we have planned for almost 7 months and right now? And if folks that don't necessarily need them will get them, then fine, it will be stimulative to the economy. Janet Yellen here is doubling down on the belief that this is not meant to be a relief check, even though we all know that at this point, come on, $1,400 more dollars is relief. It's not really stimulus. But let's put aside that argument for a moment and just look at what Janet Yellen is saying. Janet Yellen believes that this $1.9 trillion, the full package, the full really large package for Janet Yellen, will be so stimulative to the economy that we will be able to basically turn on, like sometimes I see it as kind of a car that has a dual motor, one on the left, one on the right. I like to think of the analogy of right now we're just driving with one of the motors, let's say on the right, and we're constantly trying to fight the steering wheel to go over another side and not hit the road and not go off-road or something, just stay straight line. And this $1.9 trillion package is, in my analogy, that second motor, and it's going to help us drive smoother, recover faster, and drive in a straight line. Therefore, she's not worried that people will get stimulus, and if people who don't necessarily need them, it will still be stimulative to the economy to some extent, and that's what we want to do. It's important that we do that before March 15th, because we do not want any form of a fiscal cliff. March 15th is obviously a deadline when unemployment expires, and this is why we need this bill to pass. After all, unemployment figures today, if you add the unemployment claims of 883,000, which is about 14,000 more than the Dow Jones analysis, and the PUA, so people filing for unemployment, even though they're self-employed, you will have just under 1.4 million unemployment filings, which is bad, really bad. And Janet Yellen believed that spending $1.9 trillion in this extra package will spur the economy of the United States faster. She echoes, it's going to take until, she said that if the recovery is going to take until 2024 without it to get to full employment, but with this package they can get there sooner, maybe by 2022 or even 2023. It's going to really speed up the recovery, and now we can get back to full employment. And on the topic of Bitcoin, and this topic comes up often, the question is there going to be more regulation coming from Janet Yellen? And why Janet Yellen doesn't come out with clear policies for Bitcoin? Probably because they haven't really determined clear policies for it yet. I personally expect there to become some regulation for Bitcoin. And Janet Yellen's focus is highly on illicit activity. So Janet Yellen's main concern is trying to prevent that, and it makes sense that as the head of Treasury Department, they're trying to collect as much revenue they can for the United States. Janet Yellen's goal is making sure that people aren't using Bitcoin to evade taxes. And my expectation is that in the tax transparency world, but in terms of regulation coming down and somehow killing the usefulness of Bitcoin, I don't believe that there are a lot of folks that say, I'm not touching Bitcoin until we have regulation because not sure what we're going to get. And I sympathize with that, but I don't necessarily agree with that because Bitcoin is something that we can invest in as a smaller part of our portfolio. Around 10% of it, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. And that's what we would really expect from a regulator that would say, we need some rules around making sure that people aren't ripping off the government's ability to collect taxation, as much as obviously we dislike taxation or just outright we don't want taxation and disagree with it, and this is to be expected. And now Janet Yellen did also weigh in on the state of the market, and she mentions that price multiples may be high right now in terms of stock market valuations, but this is probably because interest rates are so low. And ultimately, should we be worried about the fact that we're going to hit new levels of debt or higher and higher levels of debt. And she takes pretty much the same approach that Jerome Powell said, and says, look, we've got such a massive capacity to keep this money printer printing, we don't have to worry about it. Now, Janet Yellen did also touch briefly on making sure that China reduces their unfair trade practices, whether they'll follow up or they'll continue rather Trump's sanctions, and kind of see how China behaves over the next few months. Not too much of a change there. Reiterated that the real unemployment rate is probably close to 10% at this point, and she hopes to have a bipartisan deal on stimulus within the next 2 weeks. I personally think that the next 2 weeks is a little bit of a long shot, maybe 3.5 weeks. So I'd say, okay, yeah, we'll probably have a deal, whether it be bipartisan or not, we'll see. But overall, a lot of reiteration here from Janet Yellen, and generally what we're looking for when regulators like Janet Yellen or Jerome Powell talk is a change or some kind of defining of their beliefs. We don't have any more defining of our beliefs on China. We don't have more defining of our beliefs on Bitcoin, which really means, in my opinion, those two things aren't heavily surveilled on the radar. But we do have a defining of our beliefs on stimulus checks, and that is defining of who cares if people get the stimulus checks who don't need them. We need to stimulate the economy no matter what, and in my opinion, this doubling down on the checks, whether or not people need them or not, or getting those checks out, is a very, very bullish sign that the Biden administration is all in on these stimulus checks. And it should send a clear signal to markets that the stimulus package is coming, like it or not. We'll see what happens. Knock on wood. We can't hold our bets for this kind of stuff. But anyway, if you're interested, so I think that's it for today. And if you appreciated the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hope to see you guys next time.